Great store buy. This is something that's very important to me and every SBIR, STTR agency back east. Alliances among ventures, companies, universities, they're a crucial means for funding and market development. And if we do it right, if we form carefully strategic alliances to help startups develop and exploit their unique strengths and success, it strongly enhances our likelihood of funding. So this is a very important conference, and I wanted to introduce you to Jim Lano, who is our host, and he will in turn introduce his panel to you. Jim Lano is Associate Director of Strategic Partnerships here at the Office of Technology Partnerships. And his role, among a myriad of others, is to manage corporate partnership opportunities and match UCR assets to the needs of industry, and also to work in guiding us in the formation of partnerships that work. And Jim, to that end, I'm going to hand the baton over to you and let you have at it. Welcome, everybody. It's good to have you.
Martin, thank you very much for that introduction. It's wonderful to be here, and I want to certainly thank the 5 panelists that have joined us today. I'll be introducing them shortly. However, I just wanted to point out that the efforts and the means that we go through within our Office of Technology Partnerships, reaching out to industry partners, is the same as we're going to be speaking about today, and how startups, entrepreneurs may be wanting to work with industry in terms of SBIR. So Martin, you did a wonderful job in introducing the topic, and I'd like to start off by introducing our panel. Hopefully you're able to see all of them, but I'll start off with Derek Drost, PhD. He is the Innovation Manager with BASF Biosciences, BASF Cara, located in Berkeley and also Sacramento. Keith J. Marcinowski, PhD, Principal Scientist, Technology Scouting and Innovation with the J.M. Smucker Company. Claudia Rosler, Director of Agriculture for the Azure Global Engineering Group with Microsoft. Alex Primus is the Global Enterprise Lead in Academic Industrial Markets, Corporate Accounts with Thermo Fisher Scientific. And then finally, Keith Chung, MD, with New Ventures Transactions with the Johnson & Johnson Company, Johnson & Johnson Innovation in California Innovation Center in San Diego. My pleasure to have all of you with us. I think the group represents multiple industries and also represents our diverse research that we have here in terms of medicine, engineering, data science, computers, and agriculture. So at this point, I'd like to have each of our panelists introduce themselves, speak a little bit about their company, certainly the research, and their role as well. So I'm going to start with who I can see at the moment, and we have 2 Keiths on the panel. And so Keith Marcinowski, I see you first. And so if you can go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about Smucker and the role, and we'll go from there.
Sure. All right, Jim, thanks. Can everybody hear me okay? I just want to make sure I got my microphone. We good to go?
We're good to go, Keith. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so as Jim said, Keith Marcinowski, Principal Scientist at the J.M. Smucker Company. I am in the Consumer Foods R&D group within Smucker. We also have a coffee division as well as a pet food and pet snack division. So in my role with the company, as Jim said, I am involved with advanced science and technology scouting. My goal really is to look at and identify, assess, and do proof of concepts of any type of new technology, ingredients, processes, equipment that really Smucker doesn't know about. And I mean, my time frame typically is out 3 to 5 years or even more. And so, I scout and go ahead and look for those types of opportunities that are maybe in line with the company, but also maybe in some white spaces that I can see to help us grow. And just a couple things I want to touch upon as far as, what I typically am looking at right now from a business standpoint, some key research areas of interest. One is upcycling of various food waste streams. So Smucker, we have waste streams and so forth, looking for effective ways to monetize and provide value for those various waste streams. Ingredient technology is a big thing for us. When I say ingredient technology, I'm looking for clean label solutions, sugar reduction, and kind of the focus on how can we incorporate more plant proteins into our various products. Also, we look at food safety technologies. And by that, I mean antimicrobial ways of treating our products. Toxin remediation. When we talk about toxins, we're talking about specifically mycotoxins with peanuts. We make peanut butter. So we look ways to mitigate those types of aflatoxins. And even from a food safety monitoring standpoint, we're always looking for potential ways to monitor our products during manufacturing and so forth. And the last kind of bucket we're looking at right now, which is real big for us, and I'm sure a lot of other companies, is on the front of sustainable packaging. So we have a goal 2025 to have certain reductions from a packaging standpoint. We're looking at recyclability and even compostability and so forth. So these are different areas that I look for with startups, entrepreneurs to engage and in particular form collaborations and hopefully come to bring some things to bear and fruit for future use and so forth. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't see the rest of you on the screen, so I'm just going to go down with the list. Derek, Dr. Derek Drost, are you with us?
Yeah, good afternoon, Jim. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Yes, there you are.
Excellent. Yeah, my name is Derek Drost. Thanks, Jim, for the invitation and the introduction. I work in bioscience scouting for the BASF Corporation. BASF is a very large company, over 125,000 people around the world, and really focused on creating chemistries to improve life. So some of the things that Keith just talked about, I would say that Smucker is, if they're not one of our customers, they should be. There's a lot of overlap in the areas that what Keith talked about and what we're looking for to help provide our customers with the solutions that they need to make the earth a better place to live. Our research is primarily divided into 3 verticals. We have a traditional organic and inorganic chemistry business that's focused really on process improvements and leveraging new monomers to create polymers and downstream products. We then have an advanced materials business, which is basically taking monomers from the chemistry division and creating new products out of those that you would see in your homes and on the shelves. So some of the things that Keith talked about with upcycling and sustainable packaging would come out of our material science business. And then we have the biology businesses, which are human health and nutrition, agricultural products, personal care and home care. We have an industrial enzymes business, and we have an animal nutrition business. And so all of those sort of fall under my purview for scouting and collaboration management. I spend about 50% of my time working with the university directly, that is setting up and identifying sponsored research projects within primarily the UC system and the affiliated private universities, Caltech, Stanford, and USC. And then the other 50% of my time I spend looking at technologies coming out of the startup environment with a heavy focus on Southern California, the San Francisco Bay Area, and to a growing extent, Seattle and Portland as well. So look forward to the discussion today and turn it over back to you, Jim.
Great. Thank you so much, Derek. Claudia
Yes.
Rosler with Microsoft.
Hey, Jim, first of all, thanks so much for having me. Good to see you. I'm truly excited about the session today. So yeah, this is Claudia Ressler from Microsoft. We have an agriculture engineering team that's building out a digital ag platform. It's called Farm Beats, which is really meant to help organizations and startups and ag tech companies that are building out digital solutions in data aggregation, data fusion, and just being able to build digital analytics services on top of this platform faster. So truly my role in the team is building out those strategic partnerships. And Microsoft is, as you can imagine, not an agriculture company. So we need all the agronomic subject expertise coming from the market, but we truly see here the synergy between bringing technology to the agronomists and bringing agronomy to technology, and then being able to build those solutions together. We'll probably touch a little bit on it today, but Microsoft also has programs that are really dedicated to the startup community out there, one of them being Microsoft for Startups. Again, here, our attempt is not just to provide technology to those organizations, but truly think about building out their business, tapping into the wide range of Microsoft sales organization on a global base to help them building their business and truly partner and going to the market. And then maybe another thing I want to touch on later is specifically around sustainability, agriculture, biodiversity and climate. We have another program that's called AI for Earth that's providing grants and technical support to analytic solutions, AI, so artificial intelligence solution that are, touching one of those purposes. And here again, the idea is to build the market and the innovation foundation that's needed to go after all the challenges we see around any crop, any region of the world, and just really what the organizations that are working with us in that field are using the program for is building out some initial models, some initial technology, but then getting widely known in the industry and reputation through the program. So that's kind of how we work with startups in particular.
Excellent, Claudia. Well, we're certainly going to have time, and we'd certainly love to touch upon those other platforms and programs that you have. They have absolute critical linkage to what we want to accomplish today. Thanks. Yeah. Alex Premis, Thermo Fisher, are you with us?
Hey, Jim, can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're a little bit faint.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate the invitation to be part of this panel. Nice to see everyone today. And as Jim said, I'm Alex Primus with Thermo Fisher Scientific, and I'm the global lead in our corporate accounts program, specifically covering the academic and industrial markets. And Thermo Fisher Scientific as a company, we're a very huge organization. We are the world leader in serving science. I think everyone on the panel here, their institutions are all customers of ours in one way or another. And we really serve every market in terms of providing all the tools, products, and services our customers might need to enable them to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer in the various things that they do within their own missions. So it's a pretty broad company, and our goals are broad as well. In terms of R&D, we do spend quite a bit of money internally on our own R&D every year to keep advancing our own innovation technology. And I do facilitate many interactions between our company and academic, whether it's researchers, entrepreneurs, startups, incubators, and other companies to build collaborations around science in different innovation that we're trying to achieve mutual goals. So we do a lot of collaborations. We do have our own innovations partnerships team that I work closely with on aligning opportunities for IP acquisition, tech transfer, sponsored research. We really run the gambit on collaboration globally to tap into the most innovative ideas and opportunities to incorporate those into our organization, and also bring the technology and innovation from Thermo Fisher Scientific to our customers to help them advance their own ideas as well. So very excited to be on the panel today. Thanks for having me again, and looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alex. Appreciate that. And then finally, Dr. Keith Chung with Johnson & Johnson. Good to have you with us. Are you there,
I'm here.
Keith?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, can see you
great.
as well. Thank you.
Sure. So brief introduction. My name is Keith Chun. I'm with Johnson & Johnson Innovation, which is the external innovation arm of Johnson & Johnson. Most of you probably know what Johnson & Johnson is, probably as Band-Aids and shampoo. But also Johnson & Johnson is actually I think like $82 billion company, or $82 billion in sales. And it's 130,000 people, and expands healthcare in general. In that we actually have, in addition to our consumer brands, which you've probably seen before, we also have medical devices, which you've probably seen as Ethicon or Depuis. We also have our pharmaceuticals division, our biotech division, which is also known as Janssen. Within Janssen, we have multiple different therapeutic areas, which includes cardiovascular metabolism, oncology, hematology, infectious diseases and vaccines, trying to remember, neurology or neuroscience, and oncology. I think I hit all of those. Probably some products that are probably of more note recently, or we're working on one of the vaccines for COVID-19, which is entered into our phase 3 studies. By way of what I actually do at Johnson & Johnson, I'm part of what's known as the Innovation Center. The Innovation Center is actually one of 3 parts of Johnson & Johnson Innovation that focuses on helping companies that are outside of Johnson & Johnson. Innovation Center works on different ways that we do partnerships, collaborations, and also do acquisitions as necessary. But we also have 2 other parts, which include J-Labs, which is a hoteling space, basically, or an incubator space for biotech startups. And then we also have JJDC, which is our corporate venture arm, which makes investments in strategic investments in biotech companies.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. It's good to have you with us, Keith. And you are just coming off a similar session from last week in terms of presenting Johnson & Johnson and your innovation to an audience of hopefully interested folks that want to collaborate. So good to have you with us today. At this time, just to help set the tone for our discussion today, we have 3 short slides. And if I can have Misty move to the next slide. This is in terms of what an early stage team, or perhaps, I think back one, Misty, there we go, corporate self-analysis. So as we go through our discussion today, for the audience to think about in terms of how they may put together a strategy in reaching out, even before reaching out, things that they may consider as a corporate self-analysis. What is it that you want to do? What do you know about your own company in terms of culture cluster, in terms of your style of decision-making, leadership styles, attitude towards milestones, certainly your financial picture, your SWOT analysis, particularly understanding opportunities and threats, possible strategic direction built upon information that you've gathered in your SWOT analysis, and then a selection of alliance strategies, develop a mission statement, both qualitative and quantitative, things that you may consider doing much before you would be reaching out to any of our guests that we have today. Next slide, Misty. And then preparing for the alliance, things that you may be thinking about as well in terms of qualitative and quantitative partner size of the company, market share that they may have, position in the market, prospect list, how do we develop those? And this is something that I would invite our guests to talk about. How are they reached out to through consideration of customer, suppliers, industry scan data groups, that people that may be in early stages and reaching out, and then strategic fit analysis. And I think we should spend some time on this today. This is critical in terms of mission statement and your goals, details of potential partners, businesses, or management capabilities, and the relationship in terms of strategic potential for your company of a partnership with target partner company, and then implementation plan that you develop, and then final pre-deal evaluation, negotiating the deal, and then a legal process as well that you may consider. Next slide, and the last slide, Misty. And then implementing and managing the alliance, formalize an alliance, implement, who will do what? How will contributions be made? What time constraints, milestones can be agreed upon now? Communication mechanisms, information flow. And then finally agree upon what constitutes success for the alliance as a whole in terms of a cost benefit, achieving an ROI, your business plan. And then finally, the deal that you are proposing should be equally as beneficial to them as it is to you. So with that, Misty, we can dispense with the slides and we'll go to discussion. Bring the panel up. And I'm going to open up my slide here. We got everybody. Wonderful. So we have, maybe just to kick off, a set of questions to get started. And Keith Marcinowski, I'll start off with you. And how should a startup prepare for and approach a corporate partner prospect? So in terms of your experience and I guess preferred way that a partner might approach, what do you think about?
Yeah, so actually at Smucker, I'm part of a team outside of what I do from a scouting standpoint. I'm actually on an internal team where we identify and work with, you know, entrepreneurs and startups, and we look for potential collaborations, even on that front. So we work with a company that has a portal for Smucker. And so, you know, these companies, these startups and entrepreneurs can, you know, submit their business plan, you know, for the portal for us to consider. But that's really the first step in my mind, is you got to have a plan. It's a great thing to have an idea, but ultimately you got to be able to put it to paper and show what your business is and growth targets, and have a plan as to what do you want out of a partnership. Is it a joint venture? Is it, you know, you're looking just for money to grow? Do you want someone to license technology if you have any IP or trade secrets, or are you looking to be acquired? So it's all those things that you really got to start with a good foundation before you start really engaging, you know, corporate entities and stuff like that for engagement. That's kind of my first. It's a pretty straightforward step, but it's still a real big thing to have in place rather than just having an idea for what you want to do.
Great, great. Claudia, I'm going to come to you because you are very much involved with startups. And from your perspective, how would you see it again with how should a startup prepare for and approach a corporate partner? You're muted.
Oh, sorry, I double muted. Apologize for that. So I couldn't agree more with Keith. It really starts with a strong business plan, right? I think for us, it's important to understand what's unique about the solution, what's the unique IP. As important or even more important, what's the market? Like, who's going to buy that? You know, how are you getting to this entity that's going to buy it? I also really want to see that it's a resourceful organization. So I want to see other alliances, like how do I have mentors involved? How do I get the right support out of alliances that I need? And then, I mean, I'm just saying this, and that might be a personal thing, but I also really truly look at the team of the startup because I think it's very important to have diverse skills in a startup more than anything. And if you have a lot of lookalikes and do-alikes in your organization, it's just not a good sign, because again, I think everyone's an organization that's very conscious about their own skills and what other skills they might need to be successful.
I appreciate you bringing that up in terms of the team, because that goes back to the culture comment that we had earlier. So that's critical, particularly how a startup culture may or may not work well with a more mature company and their culture as well. For Dr. Keith Chung, I have a question in regards to what should a startup consider in approaching a prospect corporation? So it's a little bit off our first question, but what would you want them to be considering before approaching Johnson & Johnson?
What should they be considered? Well, maybe actually I just make a comment about the previous question just a little bit. One thing that I just think about, and this is front of mind, is that a lot of times when you approach a corporate, you're one of many that come into a corporate. and you have this long list of companies, and on the inside we say, look, we have a lot of these things, and your job is to sort through them as quickly as possible because they just don't stop. The hazard there is that if you aren't exactly what the corporation is looking for, or the corporate partner is looking for at that time, you might just get discarded. And I think what happens is that a lot of times companies, especially startups, could be a lot of different things. They might make a guess like, this is a consumer product. It's like, no, it's actually, maybe it's a pharmaceutical product, or it's like it's a drug. It's like, well, no, actually, maybe it's actually an agricultural product. It could go all these different directions. So one thing is that you have to be very careful as you approach a corporate and think, how does this really fit in with what they're going to be, and also be flexible to be able to switch it. So what happens sometimes is that when you approach a corporate, you don't want to answer, you don't want to go in with your final answer. Sometimes you actually want to go in with the first part of it and then understand what they might want, and then you can start changing it. Because if it's just you and another person working on this thing, you have lots of flexibility. So anyway, so that's just my comment on the previous question. But the current one is, how should they consider a corporate when they're going into it?
Right.
The one thing I think about a lot is, like, you want to find someone who's actually interested in what you're doing. And this it's closely related, is that, if you're an early stage startup and you don't have lots of resources and you're kind of working along, go talk to people that have already declared themselves as being interested in that thing. Don't go to something that's a consumer, or they're not consumer, commercial organization that's just looking to buy a product that's already been finished. If you're later stage, then by all means go to those. But the main thing is you're looking for a fit with what they're looking for and what you are at this point. And you have to be very honest with where you are right now. So that's just a couple thoughts there.
Great advice. Great advice. Derek, I'm going to come back to you with the same question in terms of BASF and how should a startup prepare for and approach a corporate partner. We've had a number of engagements. You're working primarily with universities, but BASF as well as looking at collaboration outside of universities. So if you can fill us in a little bit from your standpoint.
Yeah, I think the one, maybe I'll answer this in a slightly different way, and that is to tell you what the mistake is that I often see. Too often, the companies that have approached us with maybe an interesting idea, but sort of an unsuccessful outcome, are the ones who have treated corporate innovation as a little bit too much of a venture capital firm. We don't necessarily always want to hear about your 5-year, 10-year, 20-year business plan. What we really want to be thinking about is, how is your technology going to help us accelerate our products or bring a new product to market in our coming out of our research pipelines. So I think what that gets to is often I don't feel as though I get enough technical background and real technical meat on the bones, so to speak, of what the company is capable of in some of the pitches that I hear from startups that are not successful or are not appealing to me. And so my challenge, I think, would be to think about how you balance the message between your longer term business outcome, which is certainly going to be important for a long-standing and a relationship with a lot of vitality associated with it between a startup and a corporate partner, but also what can you do to help us grow our business today, and how is that going to contribute to also building your business in parallel?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. There has to be a mutual benefit for both parties all along that profile. Coming to you, Alex, from the standpoint of Thermo Fisher, any thoughts again to that same question, and that'll help us get the total group's input.
Yeah, in terms of how they approach a corporate entity like Thermo Fisher for collaboration, really just echo the other points that everyone made. It has to be a win-win, and it has to be a technology that we can see a path towards integrating into our business goals and objectives. And that's key. So I think the other thing that might not have been said yet is, if you're thinking about approaching a company, try and get to know the company before you go after them. Do a little bit of research on the internet, What are their interests? Are they actively engaged in anything that's relevant? You know, Thermo Fisher has been very active in the pandemic relief activities and sponsoring relief globally from different areas, from PPE, vaccine development, et cetera. So that might be an avenue that's of interest to us. So knowing the company beforehand is always critical from that perspective.
Yeah, that's certainly going back to our first slide of doing your homework and self-analysis. Want to come back to you, Chief Marcinowski, and ask in terms of failures that you've seen with startups or teams that may have approached Smuckers. Where do you see those failures happening? What do you see that could have been done to prevent them?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's been a situation once again where, the business plan, they're just, people had a great idea and they were excited about it, but they didn't know really how or what they were going to do to move things forward. And so, they're either looking for us as Smuckers to give them answers, and, that's not our role. We're at this time, we're really, we've got businesses we need to run. We're looking for certain areas, and we publish those areas of interest. So as one of the panel members said, understanding, I think it was Alex that just said, do some due diligence, do some research on those areas that maybe can be a fit for whatever company you want to engage, and then go ahead and do so and see if there is that fit. But many times it's vague, and it's just unclear as far as really what and how they want to do things. So
yeah, great. Coming back to you, Claudia, as a startup, why would a corporation want to partner with you?
So basically, you're saying the other side around, why startups would want to work with tech.
Why would a corporation want to work with a startup?
Oh, with a startup. Yeah, well, I think my answer will be a little bit different from most of the other panelists there, right? Because Microsoft has truly a partner model. So all of our success is built off partners that are bringing digital solutions to either corporate customers or consumers, which means our technology becomes a building block of their solution. So really depend on scouting and finding those partners that are helping us with reach. In fact, I don't know, I hope nobody's quoting me on this number, but I think our executive say that like with every dollar we make, it generates $10 in the ecosystem of partners. So which sort of speaks to this is our way to scale in all markets. Now, that's why when we scout, we really look for what's the path to market, like how successful is this partner going to be able to bring the solution to their customers. And then also how agile is this organization to potentially change the route they're taking. Because in technology is really about, it's incredibly fast, it's incredibly changing, and the requirements are changing, the technology is becoming more advanced. So we need to have very agile partners that are not sticking with one idea that they came up with years back and just really want to not be able to advance. And so those are more the things we're looking for. And we provide the support to the startups that is helping them to reach customers, because we have global sales organizations. We help them by adapting technology. So because when you think about it, most of those solutions have some component of IoT or AI. Why would you as a startup try to reinvent the wheel and build it from scratch instead of building your solution on top of those standard components? So we'll have people that help with adapting this technology, and then sort of most importantly help them to go to market. So that really helps with the speed to market, but also with the reach and scale that you can accomplish as a startup.
Right, and so with the SBIR program, certainly that is something from phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 that is critical, because in phase 3 an entity is going to have to go out on their own, find a company that will support them. So having that behind them is going to be very, very critical. Back to Alex, what questions should a startup or innovator be asking when seeking a corporate partner?
That's a good question, Jim. Well, I think the most relevant question would be, are we interested in their technology? And what do we see in terms of a roadmap for how we might collaborate for future mutual success? And those leading questions would then ultimately uncover if it could be a successful collaboration. And the other thing I would say in terms of where I've seen success is developing connections within the organization. So, you know, as others have said, we get many requests from various sources to collaborate in different ways, different presentations on technologies. And to be honest, knowing people within the organization or creating relationships with those that can push your innovation forward in the right direction does help. So I would say, you know, building relationships, whether it's through LinkedIn or other connections, does benefit the ability to drive collaborations forward.
Great point, which leads me to this next question in terms of people reaching out. And with COVID, of course, conferences have changed. We're doing things like we are now on Zoom for reaching out. For each of you, how have things changed in terms of people reaching out? Have you found that there are more opportunities, less opportunities? How have things changed? And I'll throw that question to you, Keith Chung, in terms of post-COVID and how we were reaching out before, either university or startups, and what's going on now?
Yeah, so probably the big, let's use an example. So BIO, which is the big biotech innovation conference that we have, it's down in San Diego last year. That's one of the big ones we go to every year. And this year we continued because it was in June and everything was still shut down. Actually, I found that there were actually more meetings. And I think the reason why we had that was that it was easier for people to attend. The bar to getting onto an airplane and getting over, paying for hotel rooms, running around the conference, you know, that went away. And so there are smaller organizations from around the world that are able to participate in a conference that would have limited other people. I think I've been pleasantly surprised by that. Also, I mean, just personally, it's a lot easier to take 20 meetings a day when you're just doing it all on Zoom. I mean, it's tiring, but tiring in a different way. If I were at a normal conference, so I back this up to JP Morgan. So JP Morgan, which is held in January before we had the lockdown, it was tiring because we're running between building hotels in San Francisco to have meetings with a bunch of different companies. This way, it's a lot easier. One other comment would be that they're probably, what it also means is that since the bar is lowered, the selection is also, whatever, the selection pressure is actually lowered too. So little startup in the middle of Shenzhen, China can phone in for these things. There's not that bar that would normally say, oh, look, I'm not going to find all these guys because they don't have to travel. So they don't have to get budget. They don't have to, you know, on and on and on. In theory, that changes it, but I was actually pleasantly surprised.
It probably gives you a little more work, being a bit more inundated then as well.
But it's a good thing. I mean, that's where technology really helps us. I mean, the fact that, you know, you make it easier for people to send you documents, you make it easier to interact. In some ways, just the fact that we're having a conference like this probably lowered the bar for attending a conference like this, and also for speakers attending it. And you know, so I would say, you know, there's a bunch of things that we've learned from being in a post-COVID or in the middle of COVID time, and I'm hoping that we actually hold on to them as we go forward.
Derek, a question of for a startup or entrepreneur, how would he determine what company is feasible and a viable partner prospect? how to make that best match.
Yeah. Well, I think someone mentioned earlier, right? You really do need to do, we talk about doing competitive intelligence in a corporate environment, and competitive intelligence to us means, yeah, what are our customers pulling for? What's our competition doing, and how do we respond to it? How do we out innovate them and outsmart them? But I think competitive intelligence also plays a role in startups. Of course, you know, some startups do have direct competition. But with a truly innovative idea, the competitive intelligence that you need to be doing is who are the customers for this, for what I'm putting together here. And that means, of course, customers who are actually going to buy the product at the end of the day, but also customers who may help you develop it or accelerate the development in the course of your build up. So I think, you know, to find that information, you really do need to get into a little bit of the weeds of some of the disclosures that are out there in the public space about some of these big corporations. I know it's not fun. I think our investor disclosure is, you know, 200+ pages long, but with some creative searching and some creative effort, it can go a long way to saying, hey, you know, I recognize that this is a problem that this company is trying to solve, and you can approach them much more directly and with a much more matter-of-fact pitch in a case like that than you might be able to otherwise. I think the other thing that I really recommend is staying open to being introduced to people through different channels. So quite often, you know, my best leads that I generate in scouting are not ones that I generate myself. They're ones that other folks have introduced to me, and I'm confident that that goes both ways. So really, you know, in these virtual environments or in an in-person environment, if we ever reach that again in the future, spend a little bit of extra time networking, because rare is going to be the occasion when you say, boy, I wish I hadn't met that person. I don't think I've really run into that in my role yet.
Great point. Great point. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot that we retain from what we're doing now that'll blend into the future. Going back to you, Claudia, perhaps now might be a good time. Just give us a little bit more information on those programs that you were speaking to in terms of startup outreach and the engagement that you have. That might be helpful at this point.
Yeah, and again, maybe the two programs I'm talking about, one is the Microsoft for Startup program. Again, this is about building out markets. It's a combination, and I know funding is always important for startups. So the funding here is coming in terms of cloud credits, which is a common thing in that industry. But I think the differentiation here is really, it stops with cloud credits in many other places. We're taking it further. One, like I said, we're looking at the technical capabilities and how we can fast track the solution development of those startups we're working with. But the most important component is this help to get the solution to the market. Now, Microsoft is, again, not necessarily selling to farmers directly, but if it's a business-to-business solution, what we can help with is co-selling initiatives where we help to get those solutions in front of the organizations that we work with and that we have an existing partnership with. That's super important, because if you're a startup, you don't have sellers all over the world, right? I think that's important. And then in contrast, this AI for Earth program, again, here it's all about innovation. When you think about all the challenges we have in agriculture, from climate changes, we talk about robotics, we talk about biodiversity, we talk about increasing yield. This is meant to help fuel innovation across the world with research organizations, with startups, with universities, and help to build this environment where you can build one of another's innovation. So there's, simple things like sharing data sets or sharing models in this environment. But what it enables is this ecosystem of partners, which not only helps you to make your solution, what you're building, more aware in the market, but also find partners that you can work with and take things to the market together. So truly, we talk a lot about building ecosystems, but it's really about bringing the right market participants together and helping ideas to get to the market and to be successful.
Very good. Yeah, that goes back again to what is the mission statement of that startup? What is their end goal? What is success for them? So matching that. Keith, Chung, with Johnson & Johnson, you have similar programs that you mentioned in terms of working with small businesses, small companies.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of like touched on this in the introduction. There's basically 3 parts for Johnson & Johnson innovation, which is, again, the external innovation part where we work with people that have innovations outside of the walls of Johnson & Johnson. The IC is the one that I work in, Innovation Center, and that's the one where we actually do the partnerships, collaborations, and we'll actually do deals. So it'll be something like an innovator comes to us and say, like, I've got this great idea, I want to work on this. We say there's a fit between what you're working on and where we think it could actually go within our company. So we actually will fund them, and it can be anything from a joint venture. It can be a fee for service sort of thing where we're actually paying them to do research and we get results for that. It can also be, and this is where it touches into other areas, we work with small companies. J Labs is where we actually have incubator space, and we actually bring people in, they work there, and then we also have them interact with the rest of Johnson & Johnson Innovation. That's one tangible way. And the last one is probably what people might be more familiar with is like, venture capital. So let's say that the thing that they really need is $10 million to get themselves to the first proof of concept. That's what JJDC works on, which is, I think it's one of the oldest, I think it is the oldest corporate venture arm in the country.
Great. I just want to mention to the audience that we will have a Q&A as well. We want to allow time for audience participation and questions for the panel or individually as well. So if you have questions, and there are a few of them that have been submitted at this point, please begin to submit those. And Martin Kleckner and Misty Madero will be assisting here in a few minutes with those questions as well. We'll be bringing them on board to speak more in regards to SBIR as well. Keith, I want to reach, Marcinowski, I want to reach back to you in terms of Smuckers and anything that is working with small businesses in particular that Smuckers may have.
As far as official programs or things like that?
Right.
No, we really don't have anything per se like that. Our organization, we're actually a pretty lean organization from the standpoint. So we have a pretty small team that's involved in really just looking at the various startups and entrepreneurs. But, once we do, for example, we are working right now with a particular startup that's got technology. We completed a phase 1 project just this past May. And we're in the process now of going to a pilot scale type of unit discussion and negotiation with it. So it's those types of things where, once again, I think it's a great question. When you're talking about Microsoft or Johnson & Johnson, they've got already things pretty well established, whereas Smucker, we're still kind of in the, even though we've been around since 1897, this aspect of the company is still somewhat new for what we're doing and how we're doing things. So we're kind of learning along the way, but I think we've made some pretty good progress as far as engagement and, as far as sponsoring research and things like that. So those are the kind of things that right now we have the bandwidth for. And so it's really one of those things where if that concept or the idea or whatever the business is fits the needs of Smucker, then we find ways to engage and move forward. So
great. Yeah, thank you, Keith. Derek, I want to ask the same question to you in terms of BASF. Now, again, with BASF Cara, with whom you are involved with, you have the 10 UC campuses and other California universities, but maybe you could speak to BASF as a whole in terms of small business outreach as well.
Yeah, so we have basically 3 innovation platforms within BASF. We have Scouting and Innovation, which is a research and early business focused platform, which is what I'm a part of. We have a new business platform, which looks for more developed businesses that are adjacent to BASF's existing offerings or complementary to our existing offerings, where we may be able to build a new business case for BASF either through a joint venture or M&A. And then we have a corporate innovation, a corporate venture capital platform that really behaves like a strategic investor. So we're interested there in the long-term growth and viability for investment profit, but those businesses still do need to be aligned with kind of the core thesis of what we're trying to do at BASF. We do not really per se have a granting mechanism, let's say, to award money directly to in like an SBIR way, right? To award money directly to a company that we may be interested in. Typically, the investments that we would make in a startup company or in a small growing business would fall through one of the three innovation channels that I just described. And often those channels are complementary. So I work pretty heavily across all three of those because oftentimes we'll identify something that's useful for R&D, but also maybe a good longer term target for a joint venture or M&A or an investment and vice versa. So yeah, we don't have per se a kind of an open granting or award platform, but we do work with some pretty aggressive investment targets across all three of those different innovation channels.
Great. Well, you've got a lot going on. Absolutely. Alex, wanted to reach out to you as well in terms of working with small businesses or any engagement with SBIR programs as well. Anything there, Alex?
Yeah, we do a lot with small businesses across the organization in different ways. We partner with them in terms of leveraging government allocations for small business in terms of the business we do with our own customers internally. And then also we have various programs across the organization in R&D to support and look for small businesses that we might collaborate with and ultimately help achieve mutual goals.
Great, great. At this point, I'd like to go to questions, and perhaps Martin and Misty may join as well.
I think first we could start off. I know Scott, our director of our Epic SBDC, had a question. Scott?
Yeah, thanks, Misty. Just from a couple of startups that we mentor that weren't able to join, I guess, and you've already kind of covered this, but I'm just wondering, you know, if a university, a research university like UCR has already worked with, you know, basically brought the technology out of the lab, gotten various types of funding, found executive talent, and we're starting to scale it. I assume that would be something that would be of more interest for an introduction for all of you, as opposed to just a random startup coming out of the woodwork. Is that the case? Or, I mean, do you guys have strong partnerships with research universities, I guess is the question. And if so, I would like to work with all of you more closely in the future.
So I can maybe start with that question, Scott. The short answer is yes. I mean, if there is a publicly accessible publication and patent record that has some university backing behind it, that is, I think, better or maybe more desirable as a way to put it in our eyes than any random startup that you would probably draw out of a hat. But the tenets still apply, right? I mean, there still needs to be a solid business case behind it and a real impact that it could make on research or the business of of the corporate partner. And I think maybe more so or less so in the universities startups that I've seen, there's pressure on that, right? So the technology usually leads and the business case tends to follow. Whereas I think the more traditionally venture-backed startups are maybe a little bit the other direction. So that would maybe be one sort of item of feedback that I would offer in general for a lot of the university-derived startups that I see is perhaps putting equal emphasis on the technology and the business case could be a benefit.
Yeah, that's a great point. I guess one thing is, just to be clear. So what we do, I'm just wondering if there's a way to kind of create. So what we do with our venture capital partners is basically, we have a team of 15 mentors that, as I said, we move the startups along to a point where they are venture investable. And of course, I'm just wondering, like, what I do with each venture capitalist or group is we talk about their investment thesis, and then basically we track all the deal flow, and then we only introduce them to deal. We don't just send them any random deal. We only send them, maybe 1 or 2 deals a quarter, or maybe less, depending on what verticals you're interested in. So I'm just curious if we could build that type of a relationship with the corporate partners on this and other, this and other corporate partners we have. So I just feel like that's something that we haven't done a great job with so far. Jim and his team have, in terms of building relationships, but in terms of us connecting to you, what's happening in terms of the technology we're bringing out of the labs, I think is something we could do a better job of. And so would that be of interest to the various corps that are on the call?
So this is Keith. I'll say yes, that is definitely of interest, Johnson & Johnson. We're happy to take on any of this. We're happy to have regular meetings to look at portfolios, even if it's just the list of technologies that you happen to be looking at that come across your table or your desk. We're happy to look at those as well. I mean, we love information, and any more that we can get is always perfect.
All right, great. Thanks, Keith. I'm sure the startups would rather ask questions and hear me talk. So thank you. Appreciate it.
We always love hearing you talk, Scott. So
well, the feeling's mutual,
don't ever be shy.
Martin. Yeah, that's right, Martin. I love hearing you talk too. So it's good. We're all on the same page.
You got it.
One thing, if I
yes,
can
Claudia.
add one thing,
Sure.
Scott, the one thing I think, so I have really good experience. We have seen quite some startups coming out of a research university partnership and then working with them. The one thing I would say, what I want to play back, is this idea of a startup not inventing everything on their own, but taking pieces and having a modular approach to the market would help us a lot as well. So I think if you can help landing this message that not everyone needs to reinvent the wheel and come up with their own AI solution or whatsoever it is, I think that would be helpful from our side as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great feedback. I will definitely tell all our startups, because I totally agree with that. Thanks, Claudia. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Claudia. I had just a couple of quick questions, and then it looks like we have 8 in the Q&A, so we want to get to those important ones quickly. But one of the things that really resonated to me, and Derek, you had made the comment, then Alex, you followed up, and a few others. But it was, I think it was following another comment of send us your business plan. And it occurred to me, especially your follow-on comment, Derek, and your Alex, was that, and these are my words, not yours, by the way, that maybe we as founders of startups should perhaps engage in more of a prospective partner discovery rather than dumping a cold call business plan on you. Dropping a cold call plan on you is almost like years ago that if I ever tried to send a resume to human resources, it was as good as dead on arrival. And so I'm wondering if maybe there might be a better way than just simply sending a business plan cold call to you. Would a customer or prospective partner discovery informational interviews maybe a possibly better way to go?
In my opinion, yes. I'm a big advocate for knowing who you're talking to before you walk in the door and approach them, and for 2 reasons. One, your time is the most valuable asset we all have, right? And so you're using your time as a startup more effectively, which is very important on a sometimes on relatively short funding scales, and we're using our time more effectively as a corporate partner. But also it educates you about the ecosystem that you're potentially operating in, not just who you might partner with, but who your competition might be. So I think some time and some energy invested on the front end is always going to pay dividends, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have a couple of experiences where, in fact, Alex, one of your colleagues, you probably crash into him a lot, Abhay Kumar, was absolutely magnanimous with his time when we actually did do a discovery with him at your large campus. If anyone's ever been there, you realize that it rivals the size of a small country. That's how big it is. But Abhay was so good that we discovered early on that we were not a fit, and that saved you guys a lot of time. It certainly saved us a lot of time and rerouted us in the direction that we were supposed to go in the first place. So that's why I'm a big fan of that. And Alex, I think you had mentioned also, I think Scott was asking you or someone about funding, or no, maybe Jim, you were asking about, do you work with small business concerns on SBIRs? And the answer was yes. Are there any stipulations, funding stipulations or conditions that you work on? And where I'm really coming from is that if a small business concern seeks out an alliance with the university, there may be a minimum percentage of the take. That is to say, USC or Caltech may take 55 or 60% right off the top. Do corporations such as yours, do they have those types of stipulations, or are there other conditions, if any?
Yeah, no, thanks, Martin. And yeah, I know Abhay very well, so I'm glad to hear that his interaction with you pointed everyone in the right direction. I would say
he was terrific.
Yeah, yep. And I would say on that comment, and a little bit to Scott's question earlier, we've had a lot of great success with academic institutions reaching out to us because they recognize us as a company that they might have significant IP alignment with either now or in the future. They reach out to build a relationship with the appropriate offices and then set up some sort of cadence where they're presenting to us on different opportunities, and we can vet them and then, like you said, point them in the right direction if it's not a good fit for us. So it's very beneficial. To your other question on small business, one of the major areas we interact with small businesses is actually through our distribution channel, Fisher Scientific, and they're actually selling small business products. So they're creating partnerships with small business to sell their products through our channels and ultimately fulfill customer needs to hit certain requirements on spend with small businesses, both federal and state requirements on diversity and other variables there. So we do a lot of that, I would say, with small businesses, which tends to benefit both the small business, their visibility to customers they wouldn't otherwise have, and ours with those requirements.
Got it. Terrific. Thanks very much indeed. So I think what I'm going to do, rather than open it up for everyone to ask questions, what Missy and I discovered in a prior session was that kind of takes more time than we have. So with everyone's blessing, I'll just read the questions and toss them in the direction that they're going. So Keith Marcinowski, this one is for you from Connor O'Brien. And Connor's question, Keith, is that do you know of any sugar reduction projects involving miraculase or its functional derivatives? And if not, do you think that there'd be an interest at Smucker for something like that in terms of a joint R&D? Is that kind of resonate?
Yeah, so I mean, with miraculase, is that the actual compound? I mean, there's miraculin compounds out there that are more sugar modifier, taste modifiers type of a thing. And I think there was a company out on the West Coast of San Francisco, formerly called Miraculex, that's now called Joywell Foods, that just got an investment from Kraft Heinz, I believe. So we had met with that company a few years ago while they were still Miraculex. And, we just kept on looking and thinking about things, but we have identified other technologies that actually are sugar reduction technologies. It's not based here in the US. It was just, they were very, very early stage startup, and we wanted to kind of still keep in touch with them. But right now we're just kind of watching to see how the company grows and to see if they can gain traction and things like that. So I guess the question is it miraculase? Is that the actual compound that is being inquired about?
I'm reading from Connor's text, so all I can tell you is that it's miraculase or functional derivatives.
Okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's we are aware of those types of compounds. I mean, they are interesting. I guess the question is just simply where are they at? And, is this a fermentation type of process? What, volumes, capacity, scalability, and things like that. Just kind of interested maybe to hear where they at. So.
Got it. Great, thank you. Another question from Milan Krupa. And Milan's question is, we're an innovation company, so we also have no need for a business plan. Is that a problem? And you can react that in any way that you want. This is open to everyone.
I guess I'll ask a question. What is an innovation company? What is the definition of an innovation company?
Exactly. So, and innovate. Yeah, I cannot answer Milan's.
Is this a
question.
patent holding company that just
an innovation company could be a myriad of things,
right?
And it could be a company that has patents. It could be a company that doesn't. It could be a company that is working on a transformative information. It could be idea stage, could be far more advanced than that, and so forth. I think the bottom line, however, is that regardless of the stage that Milan's company was at, he was asking about the importance of a business plan. Now, I would probably answer one way, you might answer another way, or you may answer in various ways. Just kind of curious about that.
I mean, I say Microsoft is an innovation company as well, right? So, and
Sure.
we do have business plans, right? I think it's super important to have a business plan and understand where you want to get as a company, where you want to get as a product line. This doesn't speak against, like we have research divisions working on the 5 to 10 years horizon innovation, where it's really like, future thinking. And there's a lot of freedom for them to come up with ideas that are not necessarily built into a business plan. And then we have other research organizations that are closer to the products and closer to what's going to be introduced in the next year or 3 years. So I think it's really both is important. On one hand is the ability to innovate and find new ideas and be very agile in where your innovation goes. At the same time, you need to have a very strong business plan in place. Otherwise, it's just not leading to success from my perspective.
So we are certainly in sync. And if you were to ask that question, either Scott or yours truly, the answer would be a short and succinct yes. You at least have to have some semblance of a business model to at least guide us in terms of where you are and where you plan to go and how you plan to get there and so forth. So, Milan, yeah, you got to have a business plan of some sorts.
This is Keith, actually. Maybe can I offer a counter to that one? I mean,
Absolutely.
I think it makes sense. If it makes sense, if you're looking for an investment from a commercial company or from a venture capitalist, yes, by all means, you do need a business plan. You have to know how this makes sense within their portfolio. But let's say that you have a bunch of intellectual property that might be useful to a biotech company. Let's say you're researching a certain pathway, and we happen to know exactly what we're looking for. Just putting your name out there saying, yes, I'm working on pathway A, and I have a small molecule that's going to work on that. That is enough for me. I mean, that's enough for me to say, I'm going to pick up the phone and talk to this guy, because I know that our scientists have been working on that same thing, and they're looking for this specific answer. So in some cases, actually, it's fine. And I wouldn't be afraid of actually playing that. But then what I would say then, the difficulty then is that most people are working on a fundamental innovation, are loath to say, hey, by the way, world, this is what I've actually solved. And someone else is going to take a workaround and basically get to the same solution. So that's the tension. That's why usually, when you have a business plan, by that time, you've already locked up the intellectual property. You already have your idea where you can head with it. I would actually make a plug then that for someone like a Milan, or not for a Milan, the idea is that you have to get it out to a potential arbiter of your information. So this is something where, like, if Milan, you actually are associated with UC Riverside, you actually might want to make sure that you're on their radar. And you say, like, look, so when someone, a corporate comes to UC Riverside and says, like, look, here's a list of what we're interested in. Do you guys know of anyone that has this stuff? Then UC Riverside can act as the infomediary. They can work as the person who says, like, I'll make a connection between these two. Because normally it would be handled through a venture capital firm or a corporate innovation. But this would be someplace, and this is probably where I would say someone like Scott or Jim, this is the thing where, like, we're hoping to actually reach out to you and say, look, here's our wish list. This is what we're hunting after. here's some stuff that's super confidential that we're looking at that we don't want everyone to know we're looking at. Do you know of anything here? So that's just another way to think of it.
That makes excellent sense, and I appreciate the counter to that. And because of that answer, you get a next question. But this one is from Jared Keith, and his question is, Jared Morgan, by the way, how early do you work with bioscience startups? Or another way is, how early stage do I need to be in order for you to take a look at me? And I think you had answered that at least in part when you had addressed the IP component of that. But just to conclude his question, what are the types of things you collaborate on or how develop with these companies at early stages? And do you have any examples? That's kind of a mouthful. Does that kind of make sense, however?
No, it actually makes sense. And it's actually very similar to what we're just discussing here. Is
right.
If it happens to be something that I know I'm looking for, if someone in, our research lab has said, look, this is a problem. We haven't solved this problem. Go find this answer. And if it's easy enough for me to find it, which is super hard, just let me recognize it's super hard to find this, like that's sitting in a lab somewhere. But if I can find that one piece of information and I know it's valuable, then I will collaborate with these people. Or I'll set the collaboration so we fund them to get to the next level, or they can prove out how it actually works. And that runs the full gamut. So it could be something where we have funding. We actually could acquire the intellectual property. We could do a collaboration where we actually bring the technology in-house. There's one of those that we just kicked off. It's unnamed, but we will work with an early stage company that's pre-proof of concept to develop their technology further. But the caveat there is that that's because we know exactly what we want to do with it. We know exactly the pathway, we know exactly the type of molecule, the characteristics we're looking for. If it's not that, if it's something where it's not obvious to us that we want it, that's where the business plan really comes in, because then you're going to have to convince someone else. You're going to have to go beyond our research scientists who already raise their hand saying, this is the answer I'm looking for. You're going to have to go to someone within the business or the commercial side who says, like, yes, this is the product that's going to fill the hole in our pipeline that we want to fill at this time. Hopefully that's
Terrific.
a decent answer.
Yeah, oh, no, that works great. Thanks, Keith, very much indeed. So back to Milan. Milan says, we like telemeetings, especially Zoom. Okay, I added that last part. But anyway, he said, we like telemeetings, but the reason is that travel for startups can be challenging, not to mention costly. We get that. So getting in the door is difficult, no matter what. Any thoughts on how to get past the multi-headed dragon guardians that you have at the front door? All joking aside, is there any good way to get to you in order for you to hear their story? Let me put it that way. And this is to anybody, by the way.
Oh, go ahead, Derek.
Go ahead, Keith.
Sure. I mean, I can say one thing is, like, this is pre-COVID and pre-telemedicine or teleconference stuff. One person someone says, like, if you can't find a venture capitalist within 2 degrees separation, you're not trying hard enough. So in the same way, I'd say, like, look, if you really want to get to someone like this, you can work 2, maybe 3 third-degree connection through LinkedIn or however you want to. Sure, it probably means taking a few weeks to actually work that thing through. But that's actually how you get past, because then it becomes a personal, like, hey, a friend of a friend told me to talk to you and they'll vouch for you. That's one way to get past it. That being said, with the way that we run these things, like the bar is actually pretty low. I mean, to actually send an email, not surprised, but like my email address is actually on our corporate website. I know that's everyone hates that, but at the same time, it's like, it just means that you get a lot of stuff. And by the way, it's a lot easier for me to answer an email quickly than to read to whatever, have a half-hour meeting with every single person that I run into. So take some heart in that. It shouldn't be too hard.
Great. And Milan, you had a follow-on question regarding LinkedIn, but I think Keith just addressed that. So what I'd like to do is follow on to Daniel Carr's question. And Keith, you're still Mr. Popular, at least for the moment. And so Daniel is asking, from talking with facility directors for various food, drink manufacturers, he understands that I understand his question ran away from me. Okay, he understands that you may not be able to use widespread chemical disinfection and electrostatic fogging in addition to antimicrobial solutions. Have you explored UVC disinfection alternatives, and what's your take on that?
I would say at this point in time, it's not my knowledge that we have employed a UVC type of disinfection type of system.
Yep.
But I think we're pretty diverse from our company standpoint. Like I said, we've got not only the food, but we've got coffee as well as pet food and snacks. So given the fact that I'm just in consumer foods, probably easier for me to reach out to the different plants and so forth that maybe employ those different things, inquire about UVC type of disinfection, but also maybe reach out to other parts of the business just to see and learn. So that's a follow-up for me to actually take and maybe ask about down the road and see, have we incorporated anything like that from a food safety standpoint? So I appreciate the question. Thank you.
You bet, absolutely. Thanks much. And Jasminka has a question, and I think I can answer that for you, but here's your question. What are some common mistakes startups make when they approach you? I can answer that, but it would take about an Encyclopedia Britannica to get to share with you all the mistakes I've made in my life. But have you experienced any mistakes that perhaps prospect startup founders have made, which may have ultimately ended up being a deal killer or close to it?
I mean, we covered a lot in the conversation before, right? It's about the business plan. It's very clear about what's the intention, what you're looking for. I mean, in contrast to what I heard before, like every pitch needs to be perfect. I would say, I don't mind if someone reaches out and has a very specific question for me that I can help with, as long as it's clear, right? And I mean, I have conversations where, and by the way, I get approached by LinkedIn and I follow up if it's relevant for our business, answering the previous question, but it's like where then I jump on a call and I spend like half an hour or 45 minutes with an organization that then says, I ask, do you want to partner with us? What platform is this running on? And they say no. And then like, what was this whole conversation about? So I think it's about being very intentional. And if it's, I want to get feedback. Is this feasible? Is it the right technical architecture? Am I missing something? I think that's totally fine. And I personally am engaged with startups. I'm also a venture partner with Radical Growth. So I love to give feedback, but it needs to be very clear if someone reaches out.
Okay, great. Thanks, Claudia. Another question, anonymous. How is a startup or a small business IP or non-circumvent of sources, how are they protected when they approach your company or with your company?
I mean, I'll jump in. I mean, outside of requesting an NDA beforehand a meeting, or if you've got IP, a patent out there for covering whatever your composition of matter, your process, your piece of equipment, whatever it might be, your pharmaceutical molecule, or as a trade secret that you feel that nobody can reverse engineer, and you've got security in that. But those to me are the most common safeguards that you have in place to be safe about before approaching a corporate potential partner.
Okay, terrific. That makes sense. And I think that probably suffices for all of you with regard to that answer. Bob Harden has a question for you, Keith, Dr. Chung. And his question pertains to does J&J Innovations, Jas and JJDC Ventures, do you have any interest in expression platform technologies, for example, novel prokaryotic host for high density culture enabling high titrate soluble protein expression? That's a mouthful. Is that any of that ring a bell or resonate interest to you? If not, Bob, this is a pretty esoteric question, and it might be something that might be worth reaching out to you, Keith, or anybody else, if that's acceptable to you.
So yes, so just my brief answer is that
Yeah.
what you're talking about is a platform technology.
Yeah.
Platform technologies within J&J, or Janssen particularly, are actually handled through one group we call DPDS. It's like our discovery sciences, and it basically goes across all the therapeutic areas. So in short, yes, this is something that we actually do look at, and we do look at ways to, and the S in DPDS is actually supply, which means that we're talking about how do we actually manufacture products, particularly in this case, we're talking about biologics, which is always of interest. So Robert Harden, yeah, sure. Yes, we are interested in this area.
Great. So you can probably see the following question, Keith, and thank you for that. What Bob's looking for, as well as if you are interested, is it specific to a certain clinical application, for example, oncology, hematology? And then what if the platform enabled the lower cost production of a specific oncology, hematology target? In other words, a more cost-effective platform.
The short answer is yes. I mean, is it enabled? I mean, basically all these things. Any way that you can optimize the research, development, and manufacturing of therapeutics, we are interested in that.
Okay. All right. This is a kind of a career question, maybe from Alexander on here. And Alexander is asking all of you on the panel, did you start out as a chemist or a programmer, a scientist, engineer, and so on, and then you went into management? That's an interesting, and did you have, especially in the San Diego area, there are loads of PhDs who move on and get an MBA in concert with their PhD and so forth. And I'm trying to interpret or infer from Alexander's question here. Did you get a scientific degree and then maybe flip into management, or maybe go to MBA school or something like that? I guess he's interested in maybe how he can create a career route for himself if he wants to get into the same line of work as possibly you guys.
I'll jump.
I can go ahead, Keith.
Yep.
No, real quick. Yeah, there. So in my case, actually, I took a pretty interesting route. So outside of, getting undergraduate biology, chemistry, went to grad school, got my PhD in chemistry. I actually got started initially, first 6 years, do product development. I managed a group of 10 chemists. And then I made a pivot to actually go work in the legal field. So I worked in patent law, patent prosecution for 10 plus years for a law firm. And actually started at Smucker's in that legal side, but then made the jump back to R&D in a scouting aspect. So everything that I did in my learnings from the legal side of things with patent law really prepared me to be able to work with entrepreneurs, understand different technologies, startups, billion-dollar companies. Did a lot of work with universities. So I got to challenge and work with technology transfer offices within the universities. So it gave me a great, foundation to really do what I'm doing today, and be able to search and find and look, because I still do a lot of patent searching. I do a lot of scoping, patent landscapes and things like that, that really are helpful and helping me dig out nuggets of information of what, entities are doing. And like Derek said, even from a competitive analysis standpoint, what is our competition doing from that standpoint? So that's just me. I mean, to me, I could probably still go get an MBA, but I think the path I took has really suited me well for what I do today.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Anybody else have a similar or dissimilar pathway?
Yeah, so I started in technology. I have a PhD in plant biology, and then worked in plant breeding, genetics, genomics, and genome editing up until 2 years ago, and then moved into technology scouting to try to think about, okay, what's all the things that I've learned about the way that technology drives the boat in R&D, and how can those be? How can I find more of those exciting things and bring them into R&D? That's a different angle of getting to essentially the same place. Keith and I are in quite similar roles, it sounds like, but came at it from very different angles.
Sure, absolutely. Well, two other questions, but they're actually the same one. And are you open to speaking with anybody after this conference? Share your email or contact information, anything like that? I think there are a lot of people who have become very intrigued with you and your answers, and they are hoping to do more of an archaeological dig with you to learn the ropes a little bit more. Is that okay? Can we share information with you? If no, that's perfectly okay. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know that there are loads of people out here in our audience who would love to chat with you further. But give us a thumbs up, and we'll certainly give them. Okay, terrific. Wow, you're all mentions. You're all human beings. That's terrific. I love it. Great. Well, Jim, once again we've done it. We've taken an hour and a half of everybody's time, but we tackled a fascinating topic, and I told you so. I told everybody so, that this is corporate partnerships is immensely important to SBIR and STTR applicants. Each one of the agencies meeting with us these next 2 weeks, and those who not, said great store by partnerships. It enhances and validates credibility and credentials and so forth. Way heightens our chances of SBIR success. So very, very grateful for the generous time that you gave us, and can't thank you enough. So Jim, I'll just hand the baton back over to you to wrap things up.
Well, off of those comments, Martin, I can't be more pleased, more happy, and more appreciative of our panel for their time, for their willingness to pass the information to our audience. And it's just something that, we strive for relationships and networking. And I think that having the 5 of you as part of our kickoff today is impressive, and we are very much appreciative for your time today. So again, thank you from me, thank you from our team, and thank you from SBIR team and the university. Wish you guys well. You're going to have a lot of people reaching out to you.
Careful what you wish for.
And thank you to everyone else out there who joined us. It was a great panel and much appreciated. So be safe.
And don't
stay out
forget
of
about
trouble.
the rest of the, hey, Martin,
Yeah.
don't forget about the rest of the days. We got other great content coming up tomorrow and Thursday as well. So make sure that the audience checks out the other
Take a
panels
look at the
coming up.
calendar. Most definitely Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week. We're going to give you the weekend off, but only because we're wonderful people. Then we start again next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Loads and loads of fantastic workshops. Many more agency program directors giving talks and availing themselves to one-on-one. Keep an eye on the calendar, and we look forward to seeing you soon tomorrow. Thank you much. Be safe, stay out of trouble, don't get arrested, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye
Bye.
for now.
All right. Thanks.